Hi everyone. September is National Preparedness Month, so I figured why not have a little bit of a refresher on how we can stay prepared for any kind of natural disaster or catastrophe that were to come our way. And I feel like it's especially important to go over this again in light of the damage that Dorian did. So Hurricane Dorian. So let's just go ahead and get started. All right, we're going to start with food and water. So water is a given. No matter what time of year it is, make sure you always have extra water stashed away somewhere. I mean, there's just been too many times when cities and even little villages have said, don't drink the water, there's something wrong with it, and oftentimes you can boil it and still use it, but there are times when there is a chemical in the water supply and you can't use it even with boiling. So make sure you always have a lot of water on hand. And then I have this here, these little drink thingies. Go ahead and have a couple of these too if you can, just because you may get sick of drinking straight water, or if you have kids, just to make it a little more palatable and interesting. And then for food, I'm sure you guys know a lot of this already, but we're just doing this refresher. Let's get this over here. Canned goods, dried goods. We have crackers here, oatmeal, canned chicken, pickled veggies, soup, Spam, just whatever you can have extra on hand would help you out. And make sure it's something you and your family like, that you want to eat. Not something that you don't normally eat, because it's not going to look any better when you're totally stressed out. So have some comfort food too. Whether it's for you or the kids, you're gonna want something. Especially you're going through a power outage, even if there's like no massive disaster, but your power's out and it's been out, you're gonna want little ways to distress if you can. De-stress. But, all these foods that are canned are already cooked, so theoretically you can eat them cold. You don't have to heat them up, but most of the time they are more palatable if you can heat them up. Which brings me to this. Oh, forgot where I put it. This here. I don't know if you guys can see it. I'm trying to find the biggest picture. But it is a Coleman 1-burner propane. Like a stovetop, a 1-burner. And you just use the 1-gallon little tanks you can get at Walmart or camping stores or wherever. And this thing here, I bought this not that long ago, because my son and I moved into this apartment in April 1st, and it is now the beginning of September, and our power has gone out 3 times. And none of them were that long, but the longest one was 4 hours. And I was really ticked off because I couldn't make coffee. Everything in this apartment pretty much is electric. So I'm like, you know what? This is what Paul and I used at our cabin when we first bought it. We weren't living in it full time. We were working on it. So we would go up there on the weekends to work on it, and we had this. And this is how we made coffee. This is how we heated up food. It worked great, and it really doesn't use that much propane. So I would suggest you picking one of these up. Some of this stuff I'll put links in the description down below if you want to check them out and see, the details of the items. And I also have a couple other videos I'll stick links to down there as well. One is for making a winter car kit. Everybody should have a car kit, regardless of the season, but that one in particular is on winter. And then a go bag. You should always have a go bag. And that is just, you know, in case you have to leave your house, like right now. You know, if there was a wildfire coming or something along the lines of that. Stuff that you can take with you and get out the door, and you're going to be okay at least for a few days. But the one last thing I wanted to mention is pet food. Make sure you have extra pet food on hand because they eat, you know. So if you have cats or dogs or who knows what kind of pets you have, don't let your supplies dwindle down to nothing. I mean, that's the problem with a lot of emergencies. We don't know when they're coming, and it could just be lickety split. I mean, sometimes we're fortunate and we know ahead of time, like with a hurricane, but sometimes there's things like bad thunderstorms and there's tornadoes, and you may luck out and your house didn't get it, but now the roads are blocked and you can't go anywhere, so you got to stay where you're at. So make sure you have extra pet food on hand. But let's move on to the next group of stuff. Okay, the next thing you're going to want to do, or I want to talk about, is health and hygiene. Now, if you're in a power outage, or, well, if you're in any kind of catastrophe, the odds are probably pretty good you don't have power. But if you can't get out to a store or who knows what, you're going to want this stuff to be on hand. And a lot of this is just standard things you already have at home. But let's go over it real quick. Band-Aids, gauze, these just happen to be big gauze pads with some of that tape. You know, just your standard things. You know, sometimes you're doing things that you normally wouldn't do during a catastrophe and you might get hurt, or somebody else you know. So, you know, keep that stuff on hand. Burn cream, just stuff like that, triple antibiotic ointment. And then the pink stuff. This comes in real handy. Remember I talked about people stressing out? Well, you're going to be stressed out. You're not going to be eating normal. You know, this could very likely cause upset stomach and just all kinds of digestive issues. So you're going to want some of this on hand. Pain relief, whether it's Tylenol, aspirin, ibuprofen, whatever, make sure you have that on hand. Being in pain makes everything worse. So make sure you have this on hand. And then your own medications. If at all possible, don't run down to nothing. Make sure you have at least a few days extras of what it is you need to take. Don't want to go without your medication if at all possible. And that includes your pets, you know, if they're on medication, and your children too, if you have children. And then the last thing I have here, this is more the hygiene. Baby wipes. They're cheap. You can store them for a long time and they'll come in handy, because in most power outages your water will still work, but you won't have hot water unless you boil it up on your little Coleman over there, but that'll take a lot of time and energy, and you can just use these. And this is dry shampoo. If you've never used it before, go ahead, get yourself a can. And I'm telling you, when you feel dirty and grubby, you don't feel good at all. So if you can clean up a little bit personally, you're ready to go. Alrighty, moving along. Now I have a bunch of things here for lighting. There's a lot of different options out there, and I like all of them. You know, the whole concept of never putting all your eggs in one basket kind of thing. So this one here is one I've mentioned before over and over again because I love it. Kept these up at the cabin, still have them up at the cabin. This is a solar light. It's good, like I like this in case there's flooding because it will float. I especially like this particular one because there's a button here that you can push, and I don't know if you guys can see that, it's kind of far away, but it will light up and tell you how much power is in there, and this one's fully charged up. And then it has 3 different, you got low, medium, high, and then you have blinking. So I love this thing, but every lighting option has its pros and cons. And the cons with this one is a lot of times during storms, whether they're in the summer or the winter, like a blizzard, you're not going to be able to recharge this because it's cloudy because of the storm. So once it goes, it goes. I mean, this one will last a good while if you're using it just on low. But still, you know, if we're getting snow 4 days solid, I'm not going to be able to recharge this. But it's good to have because, you know, we might get a blizzard one day and it's sunny the next day, so I could still, you know, try and charge it. So anyways, I did get this off of Amazon, so I'll put a link to this if you're interested in that. Then I have candles. Like this thing here would be good in a bathroom or some small room. This is a 3-wick. So this, you know, on a coffee table or something. I like jar candles because I feel like they just, you know, are a little more safe. They're less likely to be knocked over, and the 3-wick is really good. And when this burns out, I'll make my own 3-wick in here. You can make your own candles fairly easy. I think I have a video on that, so if I can find it, I'll put a link down in the description box. And then this is from Sterno. There's other companies that make them as well. It's a 100-hour emergency liquid wax candle. And read the reviews. These things really do work. Now, if you're worried about the flame with these candles and that, with pets and children, then maybe put them up a little higher. Just, you know, you want to make sure you guys are safe. And then we have this, an oil lamp. You can pick these up almost anywhere. Walmart sells them by the candles, or even in the camping area. Make sure you get the oil for them, although you can use other oil with this. I mean, if you were really in a jam, you could put cooking oil in there. If you happen to have a kerosene lantern, then of course you can use that, but you got to make sure you have the kerosene. And I kind of worry about those because they're a little more flammable, but people really do like them. So, you know, that's up to you. I don't have the flashlight I wanted to show you guys because it's in my son's room and he's sick right now, so I didn't want to bother him. But it's like a floodlight. It's not a giant one, it's small, but now with all the LED lights you can get some really bright stuff. So that's really good to have as well because that thing will light up the entire room. The only problem is you got to make sure to have extra batteries on hand. So that's what I mean with all these methods. They all have their pros and their cons. So, you know, it's up to you to decide what you want to do and what you know, can work for you and your family. And oh, one other thing, make sure you have lighters. It's going to be kind of hard to do these candles and get your little stove over there going if you can't light anything. Although with that you don't need, I don't think you need a lighter, but you do for these. So make sure you have lighters on hand. And then I have excuse me, this radio. It's a crank radio. It can use batteries as well, but in case you don't have them, you just crank it and you can, you know, the radio will work. There's a light on top here. See if you can see that. Because it's very important that you can stay in the know with what's going on in your community, especially if you have something like roads that are blocked. The radio can really help you out, letting you know when, you know, they may be in your area, getting the power up, or just, you know, any kind of information like that. Make sure you always have a radio and you have backup batteries or the crank. Some of them are solar too. I'll put a link for, probably not this exact one because I don't know if they have that anymore, but another one that I've used before. Another thing I wanted to mention, your phone. Make sure your phone is charged up. You know, if you know ahead of time storm's coming, charge that phone up, and then don't use it. Don't use it for anything other than staying maybe in communication with family members and text. Don't call on the phone. Don't do any kind of videos, anything like that. That uses up a lot of power. So keep your phone charged. There are some emergency battery packs you can get. If you don't have one, go ahead and get one. Again, they're in my son's room, so I can't show you because he has several of them. But maybe you don't have one, just make sure your phone is charged up so if you need it, you have it. Now the last thing I wanted to talk about, well, here we got to worry about winter and cold and snow. Not everybody does, but a good portion of the United States does. So you need to think about if you lose your central heating in your house, how are you going to stay warm? I do have a video on emergency methods of staying warm. I'll put a link to that. But those are only emergency, and I wouldn't do them long term ever. If you're fortunate enough to have some sort of backup, you know, like a fireplace, or if you have like old coal burner or something like that, make sure you have enough fuel for at least a week. You want to err on the side of caution. Now, if you don't have something like that, which I don't, and my heat is electric, I have a backup thing. This right here, it's by Mr. Heater, and it's the portable buddy. And this too, hang on, I'm going to take it out of the box to show you. This runs on the 1 pound cans of propane. Let me see if I can grab this. So it fits right up under in here. Now 1 bottle here will last about 5.5 hours with the heater on low. So between your little cooktop and this, you're going to want to get some of these and keep them on hand. I mean, personally, I would try not to run this overnight because you're sleeping. So have lots of extra blankets, hats, coats, gloves, scarves. Make sure you always have plenty of that. I do, because a lot of times I don't know who may come and spend the night, so I always have extra blankets and stuff like that. But this is safe to run indoors. Now, I used to have one similar to this, but smaller, and in fact, I think I still have it, but it's buried somewhere up in the barn. So I bought this just a few days ago. You definitely can use it indoors. You won't get carbon monoxide poisoning. There are a lot of safety features on this. In fact, it will shut off if there's not enough oxygen in the room, because lack of oxygen is what will cause the carbon monoxide to start from this thing. So anyways, if you are concerned even a little bit, well, you probably should crack the window anyhow to make sure you have enough oxygen coming into that room. If you were to tip it, it would automatically shut off as well. There's a lot of good safety features with this. But if you were to get one of these, or if you have one, keep this information, read it over, and keep it. And I would keep this right in its original box and everything so you can find it easily. If for some reason you lose this stuff, this particular model has all the information written on the back here, so that you don't mess it up somehow or another. It's really not an expensive item. I have several generators up at the cabin, but I cannot bring them down here. It wouldn't be feasible. Most of them are kind of big, and I can't just leave them sitting out on my balcony in case we need one or whatever with stored with extra gas and whatnot. You know, I might look into a smaller one in the near future, but for now, I'm using this and my other methods of doing it. Cooking, if you can use a grill, go ahead and use a grill, but you got to make sure you have backup fuel, whether that be propane or charcoal or whatever. And you know, most likely you won't have to use any of these things. You won't have an emergency where you're out for, you know, a long extended period of time. But you might. It happens to people. It happens to people all the time, and they didn't expect it either. They didn't think it was going to be them either, but it was. So whether it's a hurricane or a blizzard or a tornado or a flood or a wildfire, it happens to people all the time. So that is why there is the National Preparedness Month, to keep us well aware of what we need to do. And I'm going to put another link. Holy mackerel, that description box is going to be full. But I'm going to put a link in there to the government's website, because it's really informational. It tells you different ways to prepare, different things you may or may not need depending on, you know, a particular catastrophe. It's just, there's a lot of good information on there that you should check out. If you can, if you have the time, go ahead and click that. It's need to know information. Anyhow, thanks for watching the video. I really do appreciate it. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. That would be awesome of you. It was nice talking to you, and you take care.